Although the focus of President Trump's trip to Europe hasn't been economics, trade still emerged as a contentious issue in both Brussels and London. President Trump continued to insist that the U.S. has come out on the losing end of its trade with the EU and Britain, and he intends to shake up policy precedents stretching back decades. Joining us is our economy correspondent, Asher Westropp-Evans, and from Los Angeles, international business executive and entrepreneur Ryan Patel. Thank you both for being with us this evening. And Asher, let's start with you. It seems that after China and previous spats that Trump has started, will the U.S. have any trade partners to trade with without having a trade war with them?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing, and we can take a look now at some of the 2017 numbers for trade relations that the U.S. has had with other countries. We can look here at the top 15 countries that the U.S. trades with, and you know what? It looks quite like a running list of people that countries that Trump has caused spats with. You know, he's looked there: China, Canada, Mexico, Japan, Germany. I mean, these are all the top order people that the countries that Trump has gone after and the Trump administration has tried to tackle when calling countries out for trade-related issues. It's going to become problematic further down the line, despite Trump's claims that he's just working to boost relationships in the long term.
Well, let's ask a business executive about that. Ryan, President Trump says, be patient, this will all work out. So far, the markets have been resilient. We are seeing, of course, this is second quarter earnings, so we're not seeing the full impact. Some earnings that will be looking good. But how concerned should the business community in the U.S. be going forward about these developing trade wars?
Well, the business community is definitely concerned. They've come out. I mean, the markets have been great, specifically because the tech has been beating the revenue stream. That's kind of helped the market. And obviously, these tax cuts you're starting to see, as you mentioned, J.P. Morgan mentioned a high earnings. So that's kind of helped the market. But when you talk about what business leaders are saying, you talk about the GM CEOs in this last round of tariffs between the U.S. and China, that this will cost jobs. Yes, I understand $34 billion, $50 billion back between the U.S., maybe smaller impedance in economics terms, but what happens is when it's spread across different industries, you're starting to feel that little pinch between smaller businesses, mid-sized companies, and that's where you're going to start to see when this thing goes a little bit longer and drags out.
Well, let me ask you then, because you did mention that the markets have been resilient. We saw that they did take a plunge at the end of early in the week when we had the China situation. At what point, or do you think there won't be any point, will the markets, specifically there on Wall Street, start to perhaps feel the impact, maybe investors hedging their bets in terms of these trade wars?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. Actually, if you look at the last 6-7 months, it's been, I think Wall Street understands now the rhetoric of the administration. It looks like it goes up, it comes down. I think where the market will react when something gets a lot more, I don't want to use real, but when it digs in a little more deeper and it's going to have an effect where it's going to be a month to 2 months. I think we're going to see in the next 2-3 months, right, we're going to see the effects in July and maybe in August to see where that number actually is. And if it stays a little bit smaller when it comes to revenue stream, it's great for Wall Street because they don't have to react to it. But I think when the trade wars with the EU, Canada, and China and Mexico all hit at the same time, that's where I think you're going to start seeing it.
Asher, President Trump made several controversial comments in his trip in NATO and today in the UK. But one of the things he and May agreed on today was maybe the need for a US-UK free trade deal after Brexit. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, this is an interesting one, Iman, because this really fits in with Trump's pattern for negotiations and has been his calling card since the campaign back in 2016. Trump has often stated his inclination for these bilateral deals. He doesn't want these large-scale multilateral deals, famously pulling the U.S. out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a big multilateral deal, saying that these things are confusing and the U.S. often loses, and he wants to deal one-on-one. I guess the art of the deal is a one-on-one thing when it comes to Trump, and this seems to fit very well with the sort of Brexit narrative that's going on with the UK at the moment. They're going to be forced to do these sort of bilateral single deals with a range of nations, and I think May will be very open and seems already to show that she's very open to the idea of this partnership with the US as it suits both of their interests very neatly.
But Asher, is there a danger instead of countries then coming to Donald Trump and saying, okay, we will make these one-on-one deals with you, the other side of that could be they going to other trading partners or trading blocks going to other partners and say, okay, let's make deals that cut out the U.S.
Exactly right, Kalev. And that's what we saw with the Trans-Pacific Partnership that ended up going ahead without the U.S. involvement. You had these other 11 countries able to form a very successful trade deal without involvement in the U.S. And Trump later spoke about perhaps wanting to re-enter that deal because they were feeling left out in the cold. And this is something we could potentially see more of, particularly if China gets its way. China has been pushing very hard in the EU and sort of making allusions to these sort of other trading blocs to say, hey, we're open for business, why not come do deals with us instead of dealing with the US that's currently mired in protectionism and sort of a unilateralist approach.
So obviously the US's allies are not too pleased with these new policies, but how is all this trade talk resonating for Trump domestically?
Look, domestically he seems to be doing pretty well on these numbers. You know, the steel industry gets pretty excited when these steel and aluminum tariffs come in, and local industry and local business seems to be riding the boom at the moment off the tax cuts from earlier in the year, which are providing massive stimulus to the market and holding the stock market in check. Where you start to see a little more concern is when you turn to, say, the commodities markets, where the value of copper has plummeted as people in the commodities traders begun to become very afraid of what the possibilities are of these sort of trade war booms.
Ryan, we do hear reports of business executives now starting to turn, speaking on the quiet, to the White House, to their people in Congress, expressing their concerns. But should there be a point at which the business community starts talking more publicly against or questioning or even speaking against these trade policies?
Well, you know, Business 101, especially 10 years ago, was businesses stay out of policy. Now that has changed, and you know what's changed because of that is the consumers. The consumers, the employees, they are making this change where businesses have no choice but to step in and say something and try to influence this policy trade pieces, because now it's very open. It's easily seen by many people to be able to get to the end point. And I think businesses now, like I said, it's amazing how many more CEOs are coming out in all industries, from automotive to tech to even agriculture and farming, and they are coming out, and associations are coming out and saying, here's what the effect is. If that, and they're getting straight the news. The consumers and employees are getting the news straight from the talking head. So that is going to make a big difference and will push this pressure, not just in the U.S., but I believe in China and the EU, when their own employees and citizens are having this information. They're putting pressure there, too. So it's not just pressure on the politics, but the business sentiment will have a lot more of an impact now.